As if they don't have too much on their plates. The Kings of Combat Sports Podcast.
Neil.
They talk about the things they did that day. They'll analyze the work of Triple H. Rewind-A-SmackDown. 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 Rewind-A-SmackDown.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our free edition of Rewind-A-SmackDown. Neil Flanagan is here with me, Wai Ting. How are you doing, Neil?
I'm doing well, Wai. We have just spent 35 minutes or so talking about the news, all the news that's fit to print, to use a really outdated reference.
I wonder what would not be fit to print. I can't wait to hear what you have to tell me that we did not print.
Oh, that's a trade secret.
All right. Yes. Of course, some discussion about AEW All In London's tickets selling 20,000 as of this first few days. Toni Storm reportedly being out for the rest of 2026. What will that mean for AEW, and who could they possibly bring back to possibly replace some of that star power? We talk a little bit about DiBiase Jr., Dennis Rodman being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, the Bellas and their contract details, New Japan Cup, and of course, a little bit about the passing of Chuck Norris. So that is all in the XL edition of the show, which you can also get with feedback and questions afterwards, after we're done the SmackDown review. All of it time-stamped and ad-free in the post-wrestling cafe. All right, Neil, let's talk about tonight's edition of SmackDown. This comes to us from the Lenovo Center in Raleigh, North Carolina. WrestleTix has this out at almost 13,000 tickets, which is above the last time that they were here in September for Raw, back when they only sold about 10,632, according to WrestleTix. So a considerable improvement from that. We are on the path to WrestleMania. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Maybe is the Cody Randy Orton angle from last week. So
maybe why a late surge from the 31.6% off tickets promotion they ran on Monday. I believe that's a good all of their events.
Yeah, very good point. So could be that, but we follow up, of course, on Randy Orton, but also Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu and everything that's going on with them. We start the show off really hot here because we go right to the parking lot where cameras catch up with Drew McIntyre having just T-boned Jacob Fatu's Audi. He pulls Jacob out of the busted up windshield, starts pounding on him on the hood as security break that up, and then he follows by entering into the arena. This is when Aldis with security comes in to reprimand him, threatens to fire him, and Drew responds by telling Aldis that his son, Donovan, would be ashamed of having a corporate stooge of a father. So again, they're making things like very deliberate and very personal between a wrestler and Nick Aldis here. So at this point, Jacob Fatu comes out. His head is bloodied. He comes out attacking Drew over the ringside area. They're fighting through security, and Jacob delivers a big splash to Drew through the announce table. So I thought a really great, fiery, chaotic scene to start all of this. They're working really hard, I think, to make Drew versus Jacob not feel like the bronze medal game, in this WrestleMania title picture, right? They're putting a lot of good heat on it. I think in the brief amount of time we've had this match made official, and I think Jacob and Drew are doing tremendous work themselves, putting a lot of energy and great fire into a lot of these attacks.
Yeah, I think they pivoted really well from Drew being furious about the world title and wanting to be in the main event of WrestleMania to having to deal with this guy. And the escalation here has just been absolutely incredible, So we got, like you said, a really energetic, chaotic beginning, and this would continue throughout the show.
Yeah, they're not just coasting on the fact, these two have enough reason to want to face each other. But they're really wanting to ramp up the intensity and to make you really think that this is a WrestleMania worthy match and not just, one that was made as a result of circumstances. So I think they're doing a very good job. What do you think is going on with Nick Aldis? And did you read much more into this personal attack of Drew bringing up his son to Nick Aldis?
By name, no less. I do read something into this because it's been going on for a while. Aldis and Drew have been at each other, they're at each other's necks on various occasions, and sometimes it's been confined to the post-show where they get in each other's faces, but Aldis has always been depicted as, he'll take his jacket off and sort of stand up to him. And I do recall interviews when he first came back. He first came to the company, where he was saying he's not retired from the ring. He's able to wrestle. I do wonder whether there might be something down the road. Uh, Clearly, he wouldn't be viewed by the audience as being on Drew's level for a match. So I think that would need some explaining or some building up. But they have had these interactions where Aldous is saying, where I've come from and all this sort of thing. So they're not hiding the fact that he's a previous, in-ring talent.
They've obviously teased it very close with Adam Pearce, even up until now with the Paul Heyman thing, although that's a lot less likely or anticipated to be any sort of like wrestling thing. But they never got there. They never got there with Adam Pearce as far as like an actual match goes. I just can't see them do it here either. Like to have somebody who's being positioned as a non-wrestling GM without any sort of like introduction or like education about like his accolades outside of the ring, to just wrestling a match with Drew McIntyre is very tough for me to believe. So I continue to ask maybe what they might be brewing here. You also had Trick Williams last week, like make frequent mention of Nick Aldis, although that was not the case again this week. So I sense something going on, but can't exactly pinpoint what it is.
Yeah, I feel they're hinting at something, but I don't know if it's for WrestleMania. We're now only a month away. So, I mean, the direction for Drew seems absolutely clear.
We go up next to the MFTs versus R-Truth and Damian Priest. No tag team name for this group yet. What are you sensing?
I'm not sure. R Priest? No, that's terrible.
R Priest. Arf.
The priestly
Rise.
truth. I don't.
All rise for you can't handle the truth. No, some sort of courtroom thing. I'm sure they can. They can do it. What's this punishment? Punishment is his thing.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
Martinez?
Law and Order. No, I don't know. Crowd is really hot for this one right off the bat. Which is rare for an MFTs match. But they love R-Truth. Okay. Truth does his Cena moves. Delivers a Stone Cold Stunner, then an STF to JC Mateo. It's JC Mateo and Tama Tonga, by the way. So Solo Sikoa distracts, allowing Tala to break up a submission attempt from the outside. But then here comes the Wyatt family to take out the rest of the MFTs out of the arena. Uncle Howdy delivers the mandible claw to Solo Sikoa. JC ties up with Howdy, but this takes his attention away from the match, of course. So R-Truth delivers a jump kick followed by an AA, which gives Truth and Priest the win. New tag team champions, Damian Priest and R-Truth. Your thoughts on the match and the result here?
The match was reasonably solid. It wasn't a blow-away, TV classic, but it was pretty good. I felt there was nothing that went particularly wrong, and I thought that Truth and Priest actually worked pretty well together here for what they were given to do. I didn't see the title change coming. I thought that Truth and Priest would be in a chasing role for a little bit longer in the run-up to WrestleMania, if not all the way up till WrestleMania. So I'm interested to see the direction for the two of these guys together for the next few weeks. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by the match. I didn't think it was too bad. The Wyatt stuff was fairly minimal. And if that Wyatt's MFT stuff is to continue, it feels like it's all about the lantern at this stage, and maybe the titles can move into a different realm. I hope so.
They were so attached. Those two groups are so attached over the lantern that it almost felt like the tag titles were completely secondary and not nearly as important. So really, for that reason, I was expecting them to move on. With Priest and Truth, who, off the bat seemed like a team that are already over. They're both single stars with a lot more star power than anybody in the tag team division currently, really. So it makes sense why they would want to attach the belts onto them right away. And I would also say in the current division where hot matches is no longer the feature of the tag team division like it had been a year ago. Instead, it was like whatever they're trying to sell with the Wyatts first and then the MFTs. So compared to that, I would say Truth and Priest are a very welcome breath of fresh air. In ring, I think they're at least they're more capable than either of those other teams. And I think in Truth alone, they have 10 times the personality of really anybody in the tag team division. So I'm very curious to see how the rest of the division may interact with them. I'm curious to see how these two may compare in ring to a team like Fraxium or the Motor City Machine Guns. Like we're talking about 50-year-old, R-Truth here, who might have to like go against Nathan Frazier, and I have no doubt he'll look not 50, when he's in there. So I'm somewhat excited, but I'm more so excited on the personality side of things, what they can do for the other tag teams.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in it too. I think that these guys would create a good base for some of those speedier tag teams and some of the sort of cooperative moves and all the rest of it. One thing I thought was a bit odd is that it was Solo and Tama that won the titles, and yet they weren't the two who defended it. And even in the spooky Wyatt world, it was Gacy and Loomis who won, and they were the ones who always defended it. So I
think we just assume like Freebird rule for any factions that win the belts. Same with like Dark State, like they've done that in NXT. So the Bellas are being interviewed, and they say that they helped pave the way to make the tag titles possible. So they're very confident against Lash and Nia Jax tonight. This is when Charlotte come in. And their new thing with their gimmick is that they both come in eating ice cream. So Charlotte complains about the Bellas jumping the line and tell them they want next, no matter who wins. And Brie leaves taking Alexa's spoon.
Yeah. Yes, comfort eating ice cream seems to be their new thing.
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. I'd love to see them use it in a match.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no. No. Candice and Johnny are in the back. This is when Danhausen walks by. Candice tries to ask Danhausen to help break Johnny out of this thing, and so Danhausen asks her for $20, $20 human dollars. So no follow up on this just yet. I'm hoping. Would a curse fix this, or does he have?
I don't know if he has. He does have reverse curse powers. That seems to have been established, but I don't know whether he has to have cast the curse in the first place. But in this instance, he just took the human dollars and ran away.
You don't anticipate more interaction between these two?
Maybe.
I guess my question is, can Danhausen make this interesting?
If anyone can, perhaps Danhausen can. I know he's somewhat of a polarizing figure. Not everybody loves him. I have liked his integration into this product. I think it's a way better fit in these backstage skits than anything he really did in AEW. So I kind of like this, and maybe he can snap Johnny out of it before his contract expires.
The tone of a Danhausen sort of like interaction is kind of perfect for what the tag division has become. This sort of like awful, like poorly written, like sketch comedy thing. Yeah. Like Danhausen actually outperforms already everybody trying to do that sort of thing. So maybe he can help all of this. Sami Zayn is in the back, and he's here to react to the, attack on Cody Rhodes last week. And Sami Zayn says, you could say a lot about Cody, but you can't deny that he tries and he works hard, but then he ends the night on a stretcher. Meanwhile, Randy does all of this terrible stuff, and he ends up with the title in his hands. So he doesn't know what to make of it anymore. Essentially, he's asking, I don't know if I should be a babyface or a heel, and his world is crumbling. And this is, of course, when Trick Williams comes in, who comes in gloating about his win over Jacob Fatu last week, talks about his lemon pepper steppers. And Sammy is sick of all the talking and challenges him to a match at some point in the future, which we don't exactly know yet. But
Trick says he'll check his Palm Pilot, which I thought was a hilarious
are those bad?
Reference. I don't think they are, and there's no way there's no way a guy this young knows what a Palm Pilot is, But he delivered the line really well.
So sadly, no Sammy Cody interaction this week, but we still get some continued self-doubt, you could say, with Sami Zayn.
Even more an existential crisis for Sami. He tries to do the right thing and things just go wrong. And look at Randy. Everything's coming up roses for him. So yeah, I still loving tortured Sami, trying to work out why life is unfair.
Braxium takes on the Motor City Machine Guns. Like, it feels like it's been forever since I've seen these two teams like actually wrestle each other. But incredible speed from both teams here, but especially Fraxium, who delivered Chasing the Dragon for a 2 count. The Machine Guns come back with the Magic Killer for a 2 count. This is when Candice LeRae comes out onto the ramp as Fraxium unload with a series of repeated suicide dives. Candice then ends up hitting Frazier behind the ref's back, allowing Chris Sabin to get the victory, unbeknownst to Sabin, of course. However, Shelley sees this and sort of gives the hint towards the cameras that he knows what's going on and he kind of liked it, but he doesn't want to tell Chris Sabin how exactly they won. So Sabin thinks they won legitimately. Shelley knows that they used Candice's help, and we're off. You know, we have a storyline involving the Motor City Machine Guns. So, what do you think?
Well, first of all, two teams with two of the finest WWE themes of our era.
Smacking them, crashing them,
stacking them, and then raise your foot. You know, straight after one another, we got these tremendous theme songs. But the match was pretty good, and you know, as you would expect from these teams. And the angle, yes, we've got a story. So that's something. We didn't have anything for these guys 2 weeks ago. Then we had a little bit of tension, and now we've got Candice. And it does make me wonder if, and again, we're into the realms of speculation, but if Johnny Gargano's contract is up and he may be leaving, we're getting something for Candice here, which seems to be separate from her husband. So that's interesting to me is, you know, could she be on a different schedule and perhaps is hanging around if Johnny has to leave and, you know, do
that? Is some wild speculation, Neil. Okay, I do not put post wrestling stamp on that. We have no idea what the contract status is of either of them are.
We do not.
Of course, it is a possibility.
But I'm not presenting the news at this point, Wai, so I feel free to speculate.
You're right. You're theorist, you know, conspiracy theorist Neil Flanagan on this side. Yeah. So you said, like, you know, this was like maybe the Machine Guns' first storyline, like in what, like a few weeks, 2 months. I think this is their first storyline ever. I don't think they ever really had a storyline. They're just like two generic, like, good wrestlers, you know. Like, you really haven't, if you hadn't seen them wrestle at all before, you wouldn't be able to like separate one guy from the other. You wouldn't be able to tell anything about one guy from the other. Now there at least is a bit of tension between the two, and you know one guy is really friendly with Johnny Gargano, the other guy really hates all that distraction. So I look forward to seeing what they do with Candice LeRae and the Machine Guns here. Randy Orton comes out. He's next. He's got a new shirt. It's the same as his old shirt, but it's got a blood smear on it, and it's also $15 more expensive. So you can get the original RKO Everybody shirt for $34.29 Canadian, or you can get the one with blood spatter for $48.99 Canadian. Neil, which one are you getting?
Oh, the blood one, yeah. Take my money.
Of course. He says he's loved people singing along to his song in recent years, and so he's tried to pay it back. He's, you know, signed all the autographs, shook all the kids' hands, gave a little. Talks about giving kids high fives often, and he says the love they give to him puts a smile on his face, and then he proceeds to say, a smile that is the emptiest feeling that he's ever felt in his entire life. He says he doesn't want his legacy to be how many high fives he's given kids. He wants his legacy to be about how many titles he's won. He didn't know he didn't know how he was going to be the person he needed to be in order to beat Cody. But Cody took the weight and burden off of his chest when he told him to listen to the voices. But he says the voices don't always leave him in control. He says he needs that killer instinct to add number 15 to his legacy. And of course, throughout pretty much the entirety of this promo, he gets a ton of babyface applause for all of this. Mm-hmm. Fans are chanting RKO, RKO at the sound of this incredible rally cry. He ends by saying, I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me and they tell me that I'm going to beat Cody Rhodes for the WWE title at the main event of WrestleMania. Your thoughts?
There's in the reaction to this, there's like one of the weakest Cody Rhodes. attempts from a few diehards in the diehard Cody fans, but otherwise this is not really even a heel promo to me. If they wanted the crowd to turn on him, of course you attack the crowd, and he didn't do that at all. So this wasn't really a heel promo. It was a badass promo.
The only line that might be construed as like, something that actually was to elicit boos was him saying smiles on their faces was you give them an empty feeling or something, like, which he got a little bit of boos for, but the rest of this was purely babyface.
I thought so too. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because the other side of the coin of this is what they do with Cody, who wasn't on this show, and rightly he shouldn't have been on it because he took this huge beating in kayfabe last week, and it's nice when they follow that through by having somebody, he's medically unable to be here, sort of thing. So I'm interested in where this all goes, but there's more later, so we'll talk about it more.
I mean, this story is very much, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, being the old Stone Cold. Like these fans want Randy Orton to, be this guy who's punting people and arcing people out of nowhere and bloodying up, other guys. And I really felt like they were just continuing to play into that, like this felt almost like a motivational speech from somebody who like really wants to reach his potential and knows how unreluctantly what he has to do in order to get there. So again, just like last week, to me, I don't even necessarily think WWE actively wants booing. I think they want a big reaction for Orton. It does beg the question what sort of reaction they're expecting for Cody Rhodes, especially in the match itself, and whether or not they are okay with the crowd potentially booing Cody in the match, which they may or may not do. But I don't know, by the craft of all of this, I mean, it just feels like WWE themselves have to anticipate that this is all getting a big babyface reaction.
I think so too. I'm sure of it. In fact, that if they really wanted to get a traditional heel reaction, they would have booked this all somewhat differently, and including this promo, which was eaten up by the crowd, and I wasn't at all surprised that it was.
So we go back to the backstage area where Randy Orton's walking back there, and a lot of fellow wrestlers are kind of giving him stares, and Matt Cardona steps up to him. Matt Cardona says, "What was that? I've known you two for 2 decades. You are brothers." Orton gets mad. Don't you have action figures to play with? Calls him a mark-ass stooge, calls him an indie nerd, and he decks Matt Cardona. Tells him to stay out of his business. You would not understand. Mark-ass stooge.
Wonderful. Again, this doesn't heal Randy at all. This is kind of very funny to me.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't think you're building any sympathy for somebody decking Matt Cardona.
Exactly. It's not, Cardona's only just returned. He's hardly had any character development. It's not like he's this beloved figure. And some of those lines that Randy gave him about being a mark-ass stooge and an indie nerd, I thought were kind of funny.
It is the type of insult that you can see from somebody who I guess it is now in his 40s. Like, I don't anticipate Javon Evans insulting somebody by calling him a mark-ass stooge. No. But it's great coming from Orton, of course. Sami Zayn takes on Aleister Black. So, these two, of course, have had a thing going on for a long, long time where Black essentially is trying to convince Sami Zayn to listen to his dark side. So they're having a match. Trick Williams also comes out ringside to watch, and Trick gets a massive reaction here. So after some back and forth here, Sami sets up for the Huluva kick. Black rolls to the floor, bringing Sami Zayn close to Trick Williams. Zayn tells Trick to stay away from his match. Trick then throws a drink at Sami Zayn. Zayn, of course, takes his attention away to punch Trick, getting a ton of boos for this, by the way, Sami Zayn. Mm-hmm. And then he goes back into the ring where Black meets him with the Black Mass. Look at this shot. Oh, lovely. Awesome. This looks like an energy drink ad. So back in the ring, Black Mass to Sami Zayn, and it was a really hard looking kick too. The replay looked really good. Black even trash talks and takes his time before delivering the cover. He looked really badass here. So Black gets the win. Sami, Trick seems to be a destination for a big match in the future. Do you see it at a WrestleMania?
I'm not sure. I still am not completely clear on the direction for Sammy, other than he's ready for us. As he's going to snap at some point and lean into the the temper got him in this match, but it made him lose. So I think that's going to be another kind of what the hell is going on moment we might get backstage on next week's show. But the final destination here is going to be interesting. I think it probably is going to be a more, if it's Sammy and Trick. Trick's clearly the baby face in that encounter to the crowd, at least no matter what they do. So it could be a more of a full-on heel turn for Sammy, just leaning into right. These other people do bad things. I'm going to do bad things.
It could be a double turn match, like because of course Trick is already being treated as a babyface, but he's not officially confirmed in that status through action. You could say same with Sammy. The fans aren't really booing Sammy either. They're straight up like cheering for him, but he's got a lot of justification to turn heel at this point. So could they be building up to like a similar, Bret Austin type of double turn match?
Maybe, yeah.
At WrestleMania, perhaps.
I like that. I like that they put in time to build this, though. It's this week you and I have enjoyed these Sammy existential crisis moments on a weekly basis. So a couple more, and then I think he's going to completely snap.
Matt Cardona is with Nick Aldis in the back, and he demands a match with Randy Orton. Aldis says he can't do it tonight, so can't even get a match with this poor guy. Carmelo Hayes learns that Ilya Dragunov has accepted his U.S. Open challenge, and these two meet in the back. Ilya says he'll always be fighting himself, but he can't be the man he wants to be if he doesn't take the shots that are in front of me.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky.
Mello says it's going to be pain or champagne. Pain will entertain.
Are you enjoying the interactions between these two?
Not as much as their matches, by some distance. I think the backstage interactions aren't wonderful. I do enjoy Ilya because he's so intense and he always gets himself worked up. But I prefer it when the bell rings, and as we'll get to a little later on, it was quite the match.
The Irresistible Forces deliver a pre-recorded promo on the Bellas. They also name-drop Charlexa, Lara, and Bailey, and the Kabuki Warriors as others chasing them in this division. So that is the tag team mix. Jade and Rhea come out. Jade calls out Rhea, and then Rhea shows up, and Jade says she doesn't need this title, this ring, or the fans. With or without wrestling, she is that bitch. She's not here to make friends. She's here to make money. Rhea says, you're right. I do need this, and I live for this. Jade says, wrestling didn't make me. I made it better. But without it, Rhea, you would disappear. You are nothing but Io's little... And Rhea interrupts, saying, it's obvious you know nothing about this business if you think I need that title. That title needs me. And then she says, welcome to the big leagues, bitch. Rhea is sick of the talking, tells Jade to take the first shot. Jade says, on my time. So they continue to define this feud. Last week it was about, sort of like a battle of style versus substance. Mm-hmm. This week, Jade is being firmly positioned as the outsider to professional wrestling. Somebody who you could assume thinks they're bigger than wrestling and maybe simply viewing wrestling as a stepping stone rather than, like the actual thing that they want to do. While Rhea is the sort of maybe classic wrestler who only dreams of doing this. Did you think this was an effective way to continue this feud, and your thoughts on the segment overall?
Yeah, I did. I thought this was, I like this for Jade, this kind of, she's above the professional wrestling thing. She doesn't need it. I think that works well for her particularly, and it kind of builds on what has come in previous weeks with the you're just an aesthetic, that kind of your muscles are for show and mine are for wrestling, that kind of thing. So I think that this works rather well, and she delivered it well as well. I think this was a good interaction between the two on both sides.
Agreed. I feel like having Jade, vocalize maybe her perspective on like herself and professional wrestling this way, I feel is something they could have done from the beginning of this heel turn. It certainly would have given her a lot more identity and a lot more heat and a lot more sort of like, you know, like it would have made us think about her, I would say, a lot more than we have over the past like 3 months or so. But doing it now, I think is a good fit for her because it's what a lot of the audience already presumes about her. That she, you know, hasn't grown up dreaming about this, and that she is only doing this perhaps because it's her way to get famous. Um, that is just maybe, you know, playing off of the audience. Of course, it might not be true whatsoever, but it is playing off of what the audience already thinks of her. There's also some element of all of this, like Rhea kind of making mention of how, you know, you've done a great job not making friends recently, and of course that plays off of like whatever online you know, thing that they've been trying to build
Yeah.
briefly with basically the entire women's locker room voicing their displeasure with Jade Cargill. So I feel like all of that works out really well. um I do think the verbiage and delivery are just a little bit wooden in that, like, they feel very scripted and very on paper rather than something that feels a bit more believable or inorganic, like it's a real interaction. Moments like, you know, um, you're nothing but Io's little, and then like Rhea being scripted to cut her off at that point, I just think are a little
Hmm.
too fake, you know, sounding to me. Um, I just don't necessarily buy it really from either of them in their voice, but I would say overall this has been effective in at least crafting a storyline, a relatively simple storyline for you to be able to bite into. And of course, they will continue to add to it with our next thing, which, well, afterwards, Jade is walking to the back. B-Fab and Michin walk Jade back to the ramp, where Jade turns around, and we now have our official confirmation that Michin and B-Fab are now joining Jade Cargill. So they start attacking Rhea 3-on-1. They hold Jade up for a kick, and then Jaded is delivered to Rhea Ripley as we close the segment. So we've got Jade and her baddies officially confirmed. Your thoughts on the pairing?
Obviously, this was somewhat expected at this point, particularly after the kind of backstage Easter eggs last week with Jade having her little talk with BFAB, and Wai being the oracle, knowing that this was coming.
Please. I hardly the only. It's wrestling. Like, you're supposed to be able to, you know.
Sure,
predict
it's
it.
good. It's good. It's for Jade to have stooges. I think this works. The framing of Jade not caring about wrestling, I don't know where that puts these two. I guess they'll clear this up in some sort of way as why they're aligned in a promo segment next week. And as long as it makes half a ounce of sense, then that's okay. But I think it builds up the threat level a little bit here. It gives the other two something to do
Yeah.
rather than just pop up backstage a little bit every now and again. So yeah, I'm for it.
And in the match itself, I think that, you know, they at least offer a different element that you can throw in there for Rhea to overcome, you know, before having a 1-on-1 match with Jade.
Yeah.
So yep, I certainly in favor of all this. Kit Wilson and The Miz are in the back. Miz says it's been a really weird week for him. He says his family vacation was delayed. He was put in the middle seat, and he even has a really, really bad sunburn. So this is when Danhausen shows up. Miz says there's no such thing as a curse, and as he says this, a ladder nearly misses him in the back. As Danhausen and Kit Wilson leave, another ladder falls and does hit the Miz this time. So we're seeing the result of the curse take place. Yeah.
From his holiday right to like standing backstage, the Miz can't catch a break at the minute. So yeah, he's clearly under the curse.
Are we approaching the threshold with too much Danhausen, or are you think that it's still a safe zone right now? Is, you know,
We are approaching some sort of a line, I think, and it's I would keep Danhausen on SmackDown. I think perhaps I understand that they're introducing this guy who may not have been known to a mainstream WWE audience at all to both shows, but the shtick isn't without some sort of expiry date for its novelty, and I feel he's interacting rather. I like his interactions with the Miz. I like his interactions with Kit here. I'm not so sold on what he does on Monday Night Raw. The T-shirt spot, particularly on Monday, and I know it was in a commercial break, but it just was kind of weird. You know, it was just to get him out there and have his theme music played.
I'm not sure if those are meant for anything like beyond what they're meant for the live crowd, you know? Like,
Yeah, but he did appear on screen as well, I think, on Monday. I feel like I'd be tempted to keep him on SmackDown and
yeah.
not overexpose him.
I mean, he's still incredibly fresh. We aren't even through a month yet, you know, with him. But I do think like I I I do think there is a danger of overexposing him, you know, but especially if you're having him interact with multiple people on the very same show, like trying to carry multiple threads. I don't think that's necessary. I think you want to, you know, maintain the freshness just a little bit more. So in the back as well, Solo Sikoa freaks out at the rest of the MFTs over losing the tag team championships. This is when Tama tells Solo to give the lantern back. He says, "You haven't been yourself." Tama says, "You're starting to sound like Roman." This is like their Snickers ad, you know.
Yeah.
You haven't been yourself. Give the lantern back. Meanwhile, Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre storm into the scene. They interrupt, and they're still brawling in the back. What do you think about this? This is almost like the first sign of dissent amongst the MFTs. What do you think of this?
I'm glad to see something with the MFTs. No, we know that we've had Shinsuke in Tama's ear week after week, but really it not coming to anything. So this is maybe the first sign of Tama like becoming, you know, rather than just a lackey standing up for what he really thinks. So it's some development, which, you know, in this group, which I have very little interest in from week to week, it's something. And anything is better than nothing. So I think we're probably headed to a Tama solo at some point. It's very early days, but I mean, it's Tama Tonga that they have been concentrating on as the kind of, you know, with Shinsuke in his ear as kind of the voice of his conscience, as the person who might break ranks.
Yeah, I guess I'm just in my mind wondering, like, are we still anticipating Evil coming in, and how would he possibly fit into this picture, this scene with Shinsuke Nakamura, Tama Tonga, Solo Sikoa? You know,
I mean, it's interesting. I don't know that we're going to see a big turnaround with the advent of Evil in this storyline. I was still one of the holdouts who really didn't see him, you know, going to WWE. But I mean, it looks like that is what's going to happen.
we go to yeah.
Yeah, that's enough.
You can only hope that it's on Fridays, Neil. So you and I can talk about it, of course. Let's go to U.S. title match. It's Ilya Dragunov versus Carmelo Hayes, and Dragunov goes for this big coast-to-coast dropkick. Melo meets it with the first 48, but as Dragunov collapses, he lands the H-bomb to Hayes, who gets his foot on the ropes. A really cool sequence as we go to our commercial break. Melo comes back with an avalanche suplex lift into a cutter. We get more near falls, another first 48 counters to get a 2 count. Torpedo Moscow from Dragunov, and then a power bomb is countered into a sunset flip, allowing Carmelo Hayes to retain in a very strong match between these two, as you would expect.
Yeah, easily the best in-ring wrestling on this show. I thought Mello did a really good job because he hits a dive and can't stop his momentum, runs into the desk at some point early in the match, and he sells his ribs the whole way through the show. Now, I really hope he hasn't cracked a rib because he sells so well that some of his pins look rather kind of weak directly afterwards. But so that's either just a tremendous job by him of working, or he was really hurt by this. But the intensity of this, the speed of it, these two, I think it's one of the better matches that they've had together. They've had a few. Yeah, a really good wrestling match. I think so good that this would have not looked out of place on a Dynamite, for example.
Jelly Roll is called out Jelly Roll is in the back with Randy Orton, and Orton apologizes to Jelly Roll for putting his hands on him last week, and Jelly says, "Don't worry about it. I know what it's like to be judged for a mistake that you made." Are you a Jelly Roll fan? Do you know exactly what he's referring to?
I know that he had some sort of criminal record past, but I don't even know what for.
Got it.
So.
Okay. Well, that's enough. That's enough backstory. So Jelly Roll knows what it's like, and then Jelly Roll proceeds to launch into this big sort of like counseling session with Randy Orton. So like he tells Orton he doesn't know if he knows how much everybody respects him back here. He says he fought to become a better man. So why is he fighting so hard to be a version of himself that he's already beaten? The version of Orton he knows is and loves is the husband, the father, the man. You're a beautiful soul, Randy. That's the man I know. The real Randy knows money comes and goes, but friends are forever. I'm like, I'm starting,
Yeah, getting choked up.
Getting choked up. Jelly convinces him to start making amends, including with Cody later, but with Cardona tonight. And Orton says, "Okay." So you could tell Jelly Roll has been probably through some counseling in his life, because he gave a great little speech here, as if he was really treating Orton. So I thought he did a great job.
I feel like I'm not a fan of his music. I don't know a great deal of his history. What I know about Jelly Roll is really through wrestling. But I feel like he is now kind of this almost semi-motivational figure. I think he made speeches at the Emmys that weren't incredibly unlike this, in fact, about, changing your life around and all this sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't think this particular
Was it too
character.
much?
For me, yes, absolutely.
He kind of
It's too
went on
much.
for a bit long, like for this backstage.
The husband, the man, the father, all this sort of thing. I don't know who the guy is who did that to Cody. It went on a bit too long for me, and I think that the Randy that we saw on tonight's episode, the contrarian part of me really wanted him to deck Jelly Roll at the end of this segment
I
instead
feel like
of
that
go
could be
along with
coming.
it.
Could be coming. So yes, I got the sense it went on a bit long. But I will say, like, the delivery sounded like it was actually coming from him and not somebody just like memorizing lines and reading off a page. So I think like he actually has been doing pretty well, like on the microphone, as he will continue to do in the next segment here. First of all,
I said Emmys. I meant the Grammys, of course, when I was talking about the awards.
well, maybe you'll want to nominate him for an Emmy after this
Maybe.
segment here. So we get a little bit of an Oba versus Brock tale of the tape. They're doing that because they're both really big guys, of course. Then we go to the ring where Kit Wilson calls out Mr. Roll. Jelly Roll comes out. He's all pumped up. He wants a match with Kit Wilson tonight. But Kit Wilson would rather fight with his words. Jelly thinks he wants to have a rap battle, but Wilson instead challenges him to slam poetry. And Kit Wilson proceeds to make some rhymes, joking about Jelly Roll using Ozempic.
Do you want them, Wai?
Please, yes, Neil. In your voice, I would love that.
Okay, I managed to get this down. So Kit says, Jelly, you can talk all you want, but you've got no class. Just a couple of ugly face tattoos and a criminal past. But well done on losing that weight and looking so damn thin. All I see is a melted blob of skin. You're fat phobic, you're toxic. I might even call you a jerk. But hey, at least we've got proof Ozempic does work. Jelly, you try to inspire, but to me, it's a little bit silly. Hey, congrats on losing 300 pounds. Maybe now we can see your little willy.
You know what? It somehow this also sounds motivational when you're reading it, Neil.
That was Kit slamming the guy. Jelly then responds, Mr. Kit, I'm not really as well, I'm going to spoiler. Mr. Kit Wilson came in and tried to destroy me, but I don't have to see my willy. Your mother sees it for me. You talk about Ozempic, that's really original, y'all. Yeah, Jelly's really fat. Your mother could have told you that. I put my belly on her back. Ew. So that was the poetry slam.
Yeah. So I mean, really, this there really is no difference between like a WWE poetry slam and like what in the past we've considered like rap battles. They're very much the same thing. But Jelly Roll got some incredible reactions here. This leads to Kit Wilson attacking him from behind, laying him out with I would say like a really nice like swanton corkscrew elbow that he delivered here. So This, I would say, overall was a good segment. It elicited some really strong reactions to me, en route to building whatever they're building with Jelly Roll and Kit Wilson here.
I agree, yeah, and I think some of the physical. I mean, the poetry slam was what it was. I'm sure this was the writers were slaving over this all week for these guys, but it was delivered pretty well. Um, I think, like yourself, I enjoyed the physicality here because it looked pretty safe, but also impressive, and I think that's what you want with this celebrity involvement. The attack from behind, you get the microphone noise, so you've got that, and then yes, this top rope corkscrew elbow again looked like a safe spot, but an impressive one by Kit, and Jelly Roll, all he needs to do is take a back bump and sell a bit here, and he did it well. So yeah, I thought
He
this ended up in a success of a segment.
Jelly Roll continues to come across as somebody who is like really dedicated to this,
Yeah.
and that is exactly, I think, the standard of celebrity that they're looking for these days. People who aren't just famous, but all are famous and also like really, really, really want to work hard and give everything of themselves to in these sort of performances. That's really coming across. So I think he's, to me, certainly a worthwhile addition to these shows. He adds, like he's a name for a lot of people, and for somebody like Kit Wilson, this is amazing,
Yeah.
getting to work with him. So later on, they do announce the match for next week in Pittsburgh: Jelly Roll versus Kit Wilson. So whether or not there are future WrestleMania ambitions for any of this, I guess it will remain to be seen. Whether the Miz might get attached to it, I don't know, but they're actually actively pushing the match for next week. Julia and Kiana James are in the back. Julia is mad that James didn't beat Tiffany Stratton last week. This is when Chelsea and Alba Fire come in. They want to work together against Tiffany Stratton. Julia says, "I don't want your help." So this is when we get the match announcement. Irresistible Forces versus the Bella Twins. This is Nikki and Bree's first match as a team since 2018. And in fact, Bree's first non-Royal Rumble match since then. So the Bellas come in, they deliver some double team offense. Charlex's entrance distracts them. They're here to watch ringside, and this allows Lash Legend to take control. We come back from commercial break. It builds to a Brie Bella hot tag. Brie mode knee, and then she starts pumping up the crowd for her yes kicks. Nikki delivers a plancha to the heels. Nikki locks in the STF. Instead of helping her partner, however, Nia grabs the belt and goes over to attack Brie by the ring steps. This is intercepted by Charlotte, who stops and then attacks her, causing a DQ. So I was watching this match, and I was anticipating something to go awfully wrong. That's just sort of my expectation at this point. Like it's always kind of been like that with Brie Bella in particular. It's especially like that after an 8-year layoff from the ring. Nothing fell apart here, like to my eye at least, Now, did she look anywhere near the modern standard? The answer is no. Did she look like somebody who belonged on this roster in 2026? I don't think so. But nothing fell apart, which I feel is, to me, already slightly above my expectation.
I think, given the layoff and given the and the level she was at when she was wrestling every week, this is about as good as you could have hoped for. Like you said, the match didn't fall apart, and plenty of matches do fall apart, particularly when there's when there's interference and other people involved. So yeah, I'm with you way on this. Brie in particular, and actually, to my mind, Nikki, I don't think are really at the level of the rest of most of the rest of the women's roster in WWE at the moment. But they've got that name brand value, they've got the Bella Army, they've got their fans. They're a net positive to the company. And if they can keep things simple in the ring so that the matches don't, completely fall apart, there is value in them. And it goes back to our news segment for the XL listeners when we talked about their contract status. They've got 2 years as from the Royal Rumble. And the company obviously sees something in this pairing.
Yeah, like as something to add onto a WrestleMania card to be able to promote the Bella Twins, like they're recognizable. I understand it. I do think like putting them in matches is, I think, risking maybe like possible pushback from your audience that might at this point expect, like wrestling to look a little bit more of a higher standard. But, like they could impress us, certainly. 2 years is a lot of time to develop and get better. Like we've seen Nikki, I think, be able to adjust to a modern style. So let's see what they do. Seems very much like they're continuing to build to a multi-person match involving not just teams on SmackDown, but also on Raw, and thus the awful, terrible DQ finish, which I think we all anticipated to come out of this match.
For sure.
All right, so it all ends with the irresistible forces on top, of course. We see Randy Orton on the phone. He tells this mystery person, "I'm glad I picked up. I'm going to go to the ring and fix it." So, any further guesses about who's on the phone this week?
Who is on the phone? Now we got the hint on Monday from the cine camera footage that wrestling has more than one royal family, and of course, I like you and John, Bob, came into my mind. He's talking about his own family. Who else is in there as a wrestling dynasty? I don't think, as we mentioned in the news section, it's going to be Ted Jr.
No. I would say the leading, candidate that a lot of people are anticipating is Dwayne The Rock. One person with obviously from a wrestling royal family, and also somebody with attachment to Cody, in particular in wanting his soul, and maybe instead of Cody's soul, he's got Randy Orton's soul.
Yeah, and of course we've got that history with the beatdown, with the belt and the blood and all of that with The Rock and Cody. There's a lot of history there. The other candidate that I'd seen put about was Shane McMahon, which I completely rule out as a possibility, I have to say.
Shane McMahon? Does that qualify as somebody with a brain? I'm joking.
I don't know how on earth he would figure into this story.
But if the expectation is Dwayne Johnson, I think he would fit perfectly into the story, of course.
Yeah.
And his addition to this match in some form would make for a WrestleMania quote unquote moment. It would probably sell a number of tickets, I have to think. Significant amount, I don't know. But it will also elicit a lot of groans, I'm sure, from people that have had enough of Dwayne's middling in WrestleMania plans over the years. How would you feel about it?
I like the picture that you've set up where he's the mastermind at work. I don't care that much. It's part of a 2-day event. If he's figured into it in a way that doesn't really affect the match, then go for it, because this is WWE and this is the sort of thing they do. I don't think anyone ought to be too surprised at this. If Dwayne's available, they're absolutely going to use him.
Yeah.
You don't have to like it, I guess, but I mean, I could definitely see it.
Yeah. It also makes me wonder, like, how the heel babyface dynamics would work in if you included Dwayne Johnson in there. Like, right now the crowds are already very pro Orton. Attaching The Rock to him, how would that shake up the chemistry?
Well, Dwayne has told us that he's in the and this is his words, rarefied air, where heel, babyface, it's, it doesn't really matter. That's what he tried to tell us about him and Cody in the past. Of course, it does matter. So I don't know. It depends where Dwayne's head's at, and hopefully, he'll listen to some people. And we did have, I think John described it as maybe the worst Rock promo of all time was that one on NXT, where it was the night after the sort of Raw one, which was bad enough. And particularly what sticks in my memory is the Netflix debut, where he's patting fans on the back and picking up the phone and then like burying them the next moment and then swinging one way or the other. It was downright weird. So I don't know what to come to expect from Dwayne at this point, if he does come in.
So I do think there's a real difference between like Dwayne Johnson coming out as Dwayne Johnson and Dwayne Johnson coming out as the final boss, The Rock. Like when he's in tune and in character, I think you will see a difference, right? When he's strictly playing a heel versus like some of those appearances where he's just kind of felt like he was just playing himself with some nods to the heel work. I think that was maybe part of the reason why those felt so loose and so completely out of character from what we'd seen before. But yeah, it's I would say at least it's the leading suggestion here for who might be on the phone with Randy, and they're building this one to I would say like pretty well in terms of like slight hints here and there. So Orton comes out, he's shaking the he comes out and he's shaking the fans' hands. He's high-fiving little kids. Everything he said that made him feel empty inside in the prior segment. And then he comes out wanting to apologize to the fans, but especially to Matt Cardona. Randy says, I actually think action figures are cool. I play video games. And Randy says, I'm sorry to Matt Cardona. And he wants to apologize to Cody as well, but he's not here, so he's going to have to wait till next week. And then this is when Orton drops the mic to hug Matt Cardona, and of course, anytime there's Randy Orton standing in front of somebody else, this crowd is already anticipating what's going on, and they're great at playing with that anticipation. But first, he backs up, he hugs Matt Cardona, then he backs up again, shakes his hand, low blows him, and then delivers an RKO. And these fans, of course, they go wild. They're chanting Randy, Randy, Randy. All this insecurity come out. He says, as he's beating up Matt Cardona, they're telling him, think about the future. Think about WrestleMania. Orton pauses briefly, and then he continues the beat down, fighting through these very ineffective security guards. He puts a chair around Cardona's arm, and there are like 20 guys there. And yet Orton is still able to just completely pulverize this guy's arm, like not unlike an action figure, as these fans chant one more time as Randy Orton leaves.
This is not who you are, Randy. Used to be told by Nick Aldis. Again, the one more time speaks for itself, and I feel like the people who booked this show know perfectly well. The crowd are not going to care about Matt Cardona getting beaten up. I can't think for a moment they'd have been surprised by the one more time chance here. They shouldn't be if they were.
I thought for a second he would go on to oblige, actually do it again, like a babyface would. Yeah, he did not. So that is how the show ends. Matt Cardona's arm is broken, and then Cody Rhodes yet to respond next week. So we shall see. Well, we don't know if he'll be on next week. Next week, instead, we have announced Jelly Roll versus Kit Wilson, Julia versus Tiffany Stratton for the U.S. Championship, Charlexa versus the Bellas. So they're giving the Bellas some ring time here to get them up to speed. And that almost ends the show because meanwhile, Drew and Jacob are still fighting, and now they're atop some sort of like scaffold, like I don't know if this is like a building or a billboard.
Metal building or a portion of the building is all we see, that they're on kind of the balcony of this building. Nick and the officials are all behind a fence, so they can do nothing about this.
They're brawling. Yeah, they're fighting, and they're fighting atop this thing, and from a distance, we see that they have fallen off this building. So they are dead. We have no WrestleMania match between the two of them. Instead,
rest in peace.
Yeah, arrangements are being made. What do you think about the close for this show?
Some, corny, but just the right side of corniness, because what I'm thinking at this point is, these guys are clearly, because of the way the fence was positioned, these guys are going to fall off, and there's a crash mat down there. That's what my logical head is telling me. And also, are we to believe these guys have been fighting for 3 hours at this point, just all around the backstage, non-stop? They've been wheeling at each other. Yeah,
absolutely. I think all this is reaction makes it, honestly. This, like raising the hands up like that. Great.
Yeah, once they've fallen, he's like, oh God, they're dead. Get medical, get an ambulance. Yeah. It's a decent cliffhanger. I don't think they are dead, by the way.
Do you mean that?
Sort of. Again, somewhat corny, but it bookends the show with these two, and I think it does somewhat, keep the momentum with the fact that they hate
I
each
love
other.
this shit. It calls back to like Attitude Era, like like Stone Cold. I don't know, threatening to throw somebody off a bridge, for instance. Like this sort of stuff is great. And it's kind of like it makes a show feel like it's a bit more than just your run of the mill SmackDown or Raw. Like when you throw a big sort of out of arena stunt into it, and they threw two of those in there. We got
Yeah.
we got a car stunt and a falling off a tall height stunt with these two.
The other thing that occurred to me watching this tonight, was that this crowd were really into everything, and that how much that can elevate a show compared with, speaking of stunts, compared with Dynamite this week, where we had the car flip
Yeah.
and then that coffin match, which if you were watching it with the sound off in the corner, you'd be kind of really impressed. But the non-reaction of the crowd to that match really did sort of affect how it came across.
Certainly.
I think all of this, the crowd were eating up. They thought the show was over on a big angle, and I'm sure they were really eating up this as well. And yeah, the OTT stuff, I kind of love it too. There is obviously that logical part of the brain that's going, "This is so fucking stupid," but that's why we like it in some cases.
It kind of fits as long as it fits the tone of a show that features
Sure,
like a
yeah.
Danhausen cursing people and like all this shit like that. I kind of like it. So that is our WrestleMania build so far. So I'd say they're doing a good job with Jacob and Drew certainly through the show. Orton, I mean, if the idea is to get audiences to boo him, they are failing miserably. If the idea is to simply get people to talk about him or to see this as a big match, I think they're doing a good job. If the
Yeah.
idea is to get people to cheer him, they're doing a fantastic job because these people love Randy Orton coming out of this. So that I would say, depending on what Cody's response is, we can say maybe at least on the Orton side of things, depending on their aim, I feel that's in good shape. Like it feels like a big match to me. Any other thoughts on maybe some of the build in relationship to WrestleMania?
I didn't mind the Jade and Rhea stuff. Like you said, the scripting and the delivery was ever so slightly stilted, but Jade is getting better, I feel. And I think the framing of her as the person who in the locker room who's only here for the money doesn't really, it's a stepping stone to a movie career. That's a nice way to frame this. So I enjoyed that part as well. I think the whole show actually was a very solid SmackDown tonight. It started with a ton of energy. It ended with a ton of energy. We got some good wrestling in the show. Uh, with
Jelly
the
Roll,
tag
Kit
team match.
Wilson, tag team title change. Tag team title change.
Yeah.
B-Fab and Michin joining Jade finally.
Please sign me up. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So those are some of our thoughts on tonight's edition of SmackDown. We're going to go to the forum to get some of our patrons' thoughts on tonight's show. But those of you that are watching us on YouTube or listening on the free feeds, I would say do check out Pollock and Thurston. That just was released this past week, where Brandon and John talk a whole lot about this incredible story that Brandon uncovered. We now know Tony Khan actively put a bid in to purchase WWE in 2023. Other than that, we've got Karen and Bruce talking about the New Japan Cup Finals coming out this weekend, and also Collision Course with John Clanchester and Kate from Montreal coming to you on Sunday evening after the two split 1 hour versions of Collision taking place this weekend. And it all caps off with the NWA podcast at 8 p.m. Eastern Time here at youtube.com/postwrestling, available for everybody, as our friends at Nefarious Media will be talking about everything in the wrestling news ahead of WrestleMania season. So,
and can I put in a word for the value of the cafe is absolutely typified by this week's Rewind-A, which I thought was one of the better ones I've heard in a while. It's always great, but to go back to 1983 for Hogan v. Bockwinkel at AWA Super Sunday, unlike you and John and Jesse, I was alive at least, but not enough to have a memory of this promotion or this match or anything like that. But to go through the show, some of the history of some of the characters, good, bad, and really bad, who were involved in this show, was fascinating to me. Just really fascinating slice of wrestling history. And also just a shout out for Jesse for the pick and for his incredible performance on the music portion, at least, of the Trivia Gauntlet. He's a bit of a savant for early 80s music, it seems. A really good episode of Rewind-A.
He's an incredibly knowledgeable man about several topics, and one of them also might be early 80s wrestling at this point, because he joined us and he was a great guest. So thank you, Neil, for listening to that and for those kind words. It's available right now in the Post Wrestling Cafe, Rewind-A number 202. All right, let's go over now to forum.postwrestling.com for some of your feedback.